Welcome back to Global War 1939. We just finished off round 7, and we have entered a pivotal moment for both sides in this war as we're about to commence the Battle of Moscow, which will certainly determine the fate of Europe and possibly the rest of the game. I do want to apologize for the background noise. I do have 5 school-age children. It is Saturday. So it's either risk the background noise now or wait till Monday. And that is way too long. All right, so for the Germans, so they moved their battle group here in Olar-Kursk outside of Moscow, so they'll be entering there soon. Now, if you look at the state of the board, the Germans really don't have a lot left outside of that and the grouping they have here in Paris, which is it's okay. So they got 4 light tanks, 7 infantry, 2 artillery, a Pack 40, and 3 SS infantry. But if the Battle of Moscow fails, then they're really in trouble, as they only got a handful of armor, 4 mechanized, and a bunch of infantry scattered about. So certainly, if this battle fails, they're in a lot of trouble. They did move down their paratrooper down to Greece, and they'll be dropped off in Cairo for that bonus. The landings up in Scandinavia by the British and the Russians recapturing Finland for the second time. For the Allies, Scandinavia is only worth 5 for them, but for the Germans, it's worth 15 because of Oslo tied into 2 national objectives worth 5 each. So they're going to want to take that back at some point, but they have other problems to worry about. As for the Italians, they went ahead and beefed up northern Italy, getting ready for the Allied invasion into France. They did move some troops into Bordeaux for defensive. They dropped 5 more destroyers to go along with their current fleet of 2 battleships, 4 subs, 6 destroyers, and 4 cruisers. Now, we did go ahead and do a house rule for escort carriers to give that to the Italians. And my reasoning for that is that their economy, most of the game is a lot smaller. So to get carriers on the map, they're more likely to buy escort than the an actual aircraft carrier. They did move further south into Africa, and the bulk of their army after Cairo moved up in Transjordan to put some pressure on Iran. So this is what's currently in Transjordan. We got 4 artillery, 3 heavy artillery, and 5 of their specialized infantry. We got 4 medium tanks and a handful of infantry in Iraq, and their air force will support that battle up in Transjordan. For the Russians, so the previous turn, the Germans did move a bunch of tanks here, and they were going to. So they had like a handful of infantry and 4 medium tanks. They were going to assist in the Battle of Moscow, but the Russians went and took most of their force out of Leningrad with a couple were a light tank, and remove those pieces, as they want to limit as much material that the Germans can bring as possible. And we do have our first partisan here in eastern Ukraine. So if the Germans don't take that, which they probably won't, the Russians will get a free infantry and reclaim that territory. So the British in the Atlantic, the previous turn, they ended with only 2 infantry in Great Britain. So the bulk of their money went to resupply Britain to get ready to assist the Americans in D-Day. So that will be happening shortly. Canada went ahead and purchased another transport, an infantry, and light armor, as they do make $15 now. The Americans, they dumped all their money into the Atlantic, dropping another battleship, a cruiser, and a couple destroyers to go along with their smaller 2-destroyer sub that they already had there. The bulk of their ships are transports, and they have 3 attack transports now. And they went ahead and got some more armor, some more Marines to go along with the troops that they already had there for landings. The Brazilian army that they picked up went ahead and took out Morocco and this British territory here, Gibraltar. So they entered this battle with 5 infantry. They did lose 2 against the Morocco contingent that they had there. And this fleet here is definitely not going to engage these guys. They will link up with the rest of the Americans next turn. The 6 destroyers that were chasing the Germans around Africa, they broke off that pursuit, and they're heading back to the Atlantic, leaving 1 destroyer behind to sink the German coastal sub. That was taking $2 off the British. South Africa just dropped some more infantry, consolidated their forces as best it could, but they're just waiting at this point. There's probably not much they can do against the Italians, as they have vastly more firepower. The Italians did take out their transport, as they now have access through Egypt out of the Mediterranean, and liberated their original territories. So before the Italian fleet can get into the Atlantic, they do need to retake Gibraltar. And they have a couple of infantry here, a couple transports to make that happen. For the Japanese FEC, not really much to say here. The Japanese did wipe out pretty much all of the Chinese. There was the only battle that they lost, so they easily won this one. They only had 1 infantry. They had about 6 to 8 infantry here. The Japanese went in with force, took that out, leaving them a little thin to take on the Chinese that was in this territory. And as you can tell, that the Japanese lost that battle. As for the Australians, the Japanese did have a destroyer here. So the Australians came and took out that convoy box to give that money back to FEC. And they dropped 2 transports, as they seen that the Japanese Navy is now tied up in a standoff with the Americans. So if they move this fleet, it'll give the Americans some breathing room to do something. So the Australians seeing an opportunity to possibly take off a few islands and do whatever they can to help the aid of the Allies. Navy-wise, the Japanese went ahead and got another Armado battleship. So right now they have 4, and they only have 3 regular battleships. So right now they have more Armados than anything else. They went ahead and purchased 7 more subs to go along with the 5 they have in their main fleet. So they'll be the cannon fodder for the upcoming engagements. And they have their landing force, so they have their special naval landing force infantry and a couple of artillery, and they will this will be the force to try to go into Hawaii. And the Japanese did go ahead and attack Russia, taking $4 away from them. And they have quite a few infantry to engage the 5 Russians that are currently stationed on the furthest east of their empire. So the Americans, because of the Italians in the Atlantic, they didn't put any money into the Pacific, so the Japanese are going to be a turn ahead. They do have 4 carriers and 5 battleships, 5 cruisers, but nothing compared to the Japanese in subs or destroyers. So they're weak on the support vessels. They're pretty strong on the capital ships. All right, so we're about to do turn 8, and the battle for Moscow to determine Europe is about to commence. All right, have a great day.